David, thank you for joining us. And what are your own reflections on 1 year of the Mahama government from an infrastructure perspective?
Okay, thank you, Bernard. Good morning to your viewers. I'll keep it short.
Yes.
But I think we need to define what infrastructure is.
Yes.
Because when I listen to your programs, especially the radio, it tends to be restricted to roads.
A lot of times.
Yeah. So I want to discuss the spectrum before,
okay.
I mean the scope before I give my assessment, as
Good.
it were.
Good.
So when we talk about infrastructure, to put it in layman's language, it is simply everything which is part of the physical things we need in order for society to function.
Okay.
And just to illustrate, you definitely came from home today. I hope you didn't sleep in the office. But the home or the house in which you live itself is infrastructure.
Yeah.
You came by road,
yes.
hopefully,
yes.
And that is infrastructure. You got here, you want to do some program to your audience, you are sitting in an infrastructure. But to do that, you need power, which is transmitted by some generation station, which is infrastructure, transmission, which is infrastructure, and the distribution, which is infrastructure. The soft part is the light you see. Then to communicate, you need some internet on your phone, which also is infrastructure. Even the Wi-Fi you receive is being transmitted as a result of some repeater station and on and on and on. If we decide to drink the water that you have served us, it came from some receptacle, which is infrastructure. So it's quite pervasive, and we tend to limit it.
True.
Now, the important way for me, the way I assess it is first to look at what was required, and two, what did he say he would do, and three, what did the people say they want.
Let's take one by one. What was required?
Yes.
What did he say he would do?
Yes, and what did the people ask him to do? That's the only way. Otherwise, there must be a benchmark based upon which I'm assessing. Now, what was required? What was required has nothing to do with what he said he would do or what the people say he would do. What was required in a situation where we had come from a DDEP situation, an IMF situation with all the chaos that was around, which is what Prof has already elaborated. For me, any good manager will tell you that in such a situation, the first thing you need to do is to stop the deterioration. Now, what was deteriorating that he needed to stop? Let's give a couple of examples. One is the road sector. So if the road is deteriorating, what has been put in place to ensure that the deterioration is stopped? And I think there are a lot of examples which has come on your station. I believe during the discussion going on, we can cite a lot of those examples. Quite a lot of road projects planned, but this is stage one. Stopping deterioration doesn't mean resting on your oars. Now let's go to another sector where deterioration ought to be stopped. The most pervasive, which I didn't hear Prof talk about, which is the debt, the energy sector debt.
I asked him to jump the public debt because of time. He had prepared for
huge one. It's been perennial. It's been with us since about 2007, thereabouts. At times it appears to go, then it comes back and it increases, fluctuating similar to the graphs Prof showed. I did hear, I've been monitoring that sector, I must say. I have clients in that sector. But I did hear, I think yesterday or a couple of days ago, that as of December 31st, 1.4 billion of that debt has been paid. And I'm aware that there's been an arrangement to pay this debt down over a period. And if I follow what is being done, it appears they are even ahead of schedule in the payment. That's a significant attempt to stop deterioration. And that's quite very important. Another example to give is in terms of promise to supply students accommodation. I'm sure you've heard about 10,000 hostel for University of Ghana as an example, just to give one. Again, where you have a university which says it has got 40,000 shortage in student accommodation, attempting to supply a quarter of it in year one, even though it has not been achieved, is an attempt to stop deterioration. And it's by these that I measure. Let's take power sector apart from the payment. Doomso, I don't know whether it has returned, it was Doom CSA. You remember just before the election, there was all that issue as to whether there should be a timetable or there shouldn't be a timetable. It's by this I measure people. To the best of my knowledge, from where I stay and where I work, there has been a large amount of stability. And again, how was the power debt paid? It appears it's a simple transparency to see what goes into ECG, what the cash flow mechanism is like, and how we're able to collect and, as it were, apply a method that we have always talked about but have never implemented. Again, that's a good example of an attempt to stop deterioration. So I take it that if I score from roads, from accommodation for students as an example. That's, I mean, a highly good score performance in that angle. But I've talked about what he had to do. Now let's deal with what he said he would do.
Okay.
And what he said he would do quickly is, for me, summarized in two main issues. One is the 24-hour economy. And the reason I'm bringing in is that it has got an infrastructure component, which relates to the voter corridor, etc. The other one emanates from his 120-day promise. But that 120-day promise, the main part that relates to infrastructure for me has to do with the National Economic Dialogue, which was done.
Okay.
And that National Economic Dialogue had a stream on infrastructure. I think you were there, I was there. I had the privilege to deliver the National Infrastructure discussion, or lead that discussion. There were a lot of recommendations which were made, and what I have done is to try and track that. I've seen those which have entered the budget and those which have not. It seems to me the ones which entered the budget were more of trying to, again, address deterioration. The major ones which should be in the long term, and for any manager, once you stop deterioration, you should now move to structural changes and then to take advantage. So I assume you haven't read those stages yet. So the types which came into that plan, for example, introducing duct and crossings in road construction so that there will be a centralized way of channeling the kind of things like fiber, like pipelines, so that we don't need to be crossing the roads. That has been introduced by the Ministry of Roads. So I think that is quite commendable as an example of what. But there are certain things which have not been seen yet. Now let me deal with the big push part, because that part happens to coincide with what the people say he should do.
And what he said he would do.
Yes, which is in the National Economic Dialogue, and what he said he would do. The 24-hour document has been launched. What I have not yet seen is the water corridor in particular, which is a major, in my view, economic activity, which is infrastructure-based, which can create a multiplier effect because you link the railway, the Mpakedan Railway, to fluvial transport, which actually will cut cost of transportation in the Sahel region by about 80% if implemented. And again, I will assume that belongs to stage 2. And the other thing that I think, and I will end with that, is we need to, without resting on our OS, take advantage of the success that has been achieved in year 1 to actually now make significant structural changes and move to what takes us to the future. I'll give you an example. If I take a look at Ghana's ranking in terms of power, cost of power to industry, and I don't want to talk about homes. We like to beat our chest about being one of the cheapest when it comes to home. But when it comes to industry, we are actually number 15 in Africa.
Wow.
Where Ethiopia, for example, who we are competing with, is number 2. What do I mean by that? No nation can industrialize if it is selling power to industry at more than 0.6 cents per kilowatt hour to industry. So whereas we are above that, the next stage of structural change is how to use Ghana's advantage and drive a power hub. Once you have actually now stabilized the payment, how do you encourage more power producers to locate here? How do you encourage those already producing to increase generation? How do you ensure that you make the basic structural changes, for example, not being responsible for the purchase of fuel, not ensuring that people are not using purchase of fuel as a way to find money into their pockets? These were rumors as to the reason why ECG had all those challenges it had. These are major things to do, and the goal should be to drive the cost of power to industry down. Once you do that, job creation will then be able to overtake the chart that Prof was talking about. This is how I will assess. So I think for year 1, stopping deterioration, the score is very high. But this is the time now you test whether your success can lead to success or it leads to complacency.
Wow. David Ofosu-Dorte on infrastructure, brilliant definition of infrastructure with the broad areas, 3 areas around what ought to be done, what he said he would do, and what we say we want, analyzing it in terms of what has been achieved and what the challenges.